fish and produce and have a small kitchen there to teach the residents and the community at large about how to prepare healthy food. On a personal note, I would say that, for me, one of the most, the ways I deal with the stress that we all have in our jobs is gardening. So I have a real personal interest in this as well. It is one of the things that I find the most relaxing. Cooking can sometimes, I love doing it, I love eating, but sometimes the pressure of that can be too much, but somehow gardening really works for me. So, I know that for myself, and certainly it's the same for the residents in our buildings. So let's get started, because I'm really, given that we're starting those new projects, they're incredible experts here, and I want to hear from them. So I'm going to do quick introductions, and then we'll launch in. I will start from my right, your left, I guess. And I have sort of edited their really impressive bios down, so any errors I take responsibility for, but want to focus on the things that are relevant to this session. So Mike Hollis is the Urban Farms Director at Services for the Underserved, managing a therapeutic horticulture program for individuals and families facing a range of challenges, including mental illness, developmental disabilities, and HIV/AIDS, often compounded by histories of homelessness, substance abuse, poverty, and unemployment. He oversees design and operations management for the program's 43 agricultural and horticultural sites, including 8 in-ground community gardens, 3 rooftop gardens, an apiary initiative, and 3 season greenhouses. The program operates at supportive housing sites throughout the city in all boroughs except Staten Island, engaging over 500 residents in programming each year. Deborah Kaplan has been working in the field of psychiatric rehabilitation and recovery for almost 30 years. Since 2006, she has overseen Green Keepers, a social enterprise business under the umbrella of Goddard Riverside Community Center. Green Keepers provides on-the-job training and employment for individuals with mental illness while generating revenue through contracts with business improvement districts, local block associations, private homeowners, and various parks and building developments, as well as general grant projects through the local council members' office through discretionary funding and the Clean Streets and Green New York City initiatives. Patricia Callahan has been the Director of Vocational Services at the Bridge for the past 15 years. Pat has overseen the implementation of an agency horticultural program which began in 2004 with the construction of a roof deck and has grown to include 3 urban farms and several other horticultural projects. Most recently, Pat has overseen the implementation of a cognitive remediation program within the Bridge PROS and OASIS programs, and is also a certified rehabilitation counselor and an active member of the National Rehabilitation Association, as well as the National Rehabilitation Counseling Association. And Rica Bryan joined Community Access in November 2016 with a background in public health, food justice, and experimental education. She coordinates health and wellness programming across the agency, supporting urban agricultural initiatives, fitness activities, and food service. She's also a student with Farm School New York City, an urban agricultural program that trains New Yorkers to build self-reliant communities and inspire positive local action around food access and social, economic, and racial justice. So let's welcome them all. So this part we didn't rehearse. I don't know if somebody wants to kick off. We can start.
Yeah.
Let's start with Mike.
So for Services for the Underserved, just to make sure, can everyone hear me in the back? Excellent, projecting enough. Services for the Underserved really began its Urban Farms program as a residentially directed program. So we had tons of backyards and open space that were underutilized. And about 6 years ago, some of the residents approached the program management at those sites and said, hey, we want to do gardening in the backyard. Would you care if we took over a small corner? So that was really what initiated our Urban Farms programming, was kind of a tenant-directed interest in doing some backyard gardening. Over the last 6 years, it's developed quite a bit. As was mentioned, we now have 40 sites that are involved at different scales. 8 of those are kind of full-size, what we term community farms, and while the threshold is a bit arbitrary, we define that as programs producing over 500 pounds of food every year. So for those sites, the individuals involved really maintain the space completely on their own at this point. They're doing everything from the landscaping for the site to growing the food to preparing and distributing the food to other residents, and for some of the sites supporting things like our farmers markets as well. For the last 4 years, which is how long I've been involved with the program, we've had an employment initiative where individuals that are interested do have the option of becoming employed with the program as transitional employment experiences, and for some folks as permanent seasonal employees. And again, those folks are involved in everything from doing the landscaping, so making sure lawns are mowed and hedges are trimmed, to producing food that is distributed largely to the residents. We have a pretty wide variety of activities that we're engaging folks in. So that again ranges from everything from basic landscaping to agriculture to beekeeping. We do a couple of kind of neat experimental programs. One of our sites is growing rice. One of our sites is growing mushrooms. We have a couple of 3 sites now with greenhouses where we do 3-season propagation and different activities in the summer. And then we have a number of partnerships throughout the city for individuals at some of our sites that don't necessarily have their own backyard that allow them to still participate in some way in horticulture. So for instance, we've partnered in the past with Brooklyn Botanic Garden, with Hudson River Park, with the High Line, just to get folks out that really are interested in exercising that green thumb to participate in different activities there. For the past 3 years, we've been participating in the East New York Farmers Market. So that's a farmers market kind of out there in Brooklyn. And this year, we'll be expanding to a second farmers market in Dumbo. A lot of what we're selling, just because it's kind of a really high demand product with a really nice profit margin, is honey and honey product. But we also sell cut herbs and some of the additional produce that's not distributed to residents as well. I'm not sure whether they're pictures to pull up, but we do have a few photos from some of our gardens that we can show you. Yeah, it's kind of SUS's urban farms in a nutshell. Let's see.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. All right.
It should be coming up.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, all right.
There
Walk through what you see here. So this is actually a really good example of us being able to utilize a space that a lot of folks didn't think we would be able to utilize. This is a rooftop at one of our sites. It's a space probably not much larger than I would say the dais that we're on right here, but excellent example of not having much space but still being able to grow quite a bit. The individuals there are producing somewhere in the range of 200 pounds of food. I think in this picture you can probably see tomatoes, some peppers in the foreground, a variety of herbs, and they use it as both kind of a functional space certainly in growing, but also a recreational space. You can see they put in a little gazebo in the back that they use for workshops. Wellness coaches do meetings out there over the course of the summer, so it's a really nice, nicely utilized space that a lot of folks just wouldn't necessarily assume could be a space for an urban garden.
I think you have the...
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's what this is. Let's see. So here is one of our farmers markets. So you can see we have residents really doing most of the work, while we certainly support them in any way we can. At this point, 6 years in, we have a number of residents that are really able to run the entire process pretty independently. Valerie, who's pictured here, is one of our beekeepers who does everything from collecting the honey to bottling it. And then you can see her here actually selling the product at the farmers market in East New York. here, we have one of our propagation greenhouses, and then down here a cold frame. The greenhouse itself is at one of our larger spaces. Cold frames we use for some of our smaller spaces, but here again I think those are two really good examples of whether you have a lot of space, whether you have a little space, you can still be doing things like propagation that let you get a nice head start in the season and really be able to have residents go through the entire process from growing everything from seed to all the way at the end of the season, breaking things down and composting after the season's end. That might be it for me. So yeah, I'll move things along.
Hi, I'm Debbie Kaplan from Goddard Riverside Greenkeepers, and I'm just going to read a little bit. I'm happy to answer questions later on. In 1995, Goddard Riverside Community Center launched an exciting and innovative social purpose business called Greenkeepers, established to provide high-quality horticulture and sanitation services. The business was created to generate jobs for those program participants whose underemployment is too severe for them to succeed in the general labor market. What makes Greenkeepers unique is that we exclusively train and employ individuals living with mental illness, striving to offer permanent employment opportunities to some of New York City's most underemployed individuals. Each Greenkeepers team consists of 3 to 5 crew members and a crew leader. All crew leaders are experienced crew members who in turn provide ongoing training of new potential employees and ensure that each contract is completed to the highest level. The majority of Greenkeepers employees come from many years of homelessness and unemployment. Many live in supportive housing through Goddard Riverside and other shinny housing providers in the New York City area. The opportunity to secure employment is also an opportunity to rebuild lives and reconnect with the community. Greenkeepers operates as part of a larger vocational rehabilitation program called Top Opportunities, or TOP-OP. And prior to securing a position on Greenkeepers, most employees are required to be part of the supported employment program through TOP-OP, where they receive intensive vocational training and ongoing job retention supports. Employment with Greenkeepers is excellent preparation for jobs in landscaping, sanitation companies, and private sector employment in general. In addition to teaching specific landscaping skills, Greenkeepers allows its employees to develop excellent general work skills as punctuality, teamwork, and acceptance of supervision. Greenkeepers is designed to act as both a stepping stone to private sector jobs and as permanent, real employment. Many Greenkeepers move on to other jobs in the community, but quite a few Greenkeepers have been with us for over 10 years. They find the work deeply satisfying, and they receive words of gratitude and appreciation from the public all the time. Today, 22 years later, Greenkeepers has grown into a thriving small business, employing over 45 part-time employees and 3 permanent employees, and it currently carries up to 25 customers, including a number of business improvement districts, block associations, as well as residential and commercial contracts. We are currently working on 2 citywide initiatives called Greener New York City and Clean Streets New York City. The Clean Streets Initiative is providing year-round street sanitation on the Upper West Side and enables Greenkeepers to be employed throughout the year. Up until this year, we only had 2 or 3 year-round projects with business improvement districts and Riverside Park. Greener New York City is a project that is working on greening and beautifying the grounds of several NYCHA buildings in the Upper West Side neighborhood. Greenkeeper services range from plant installation and design, ongoing horticulture maintenance such as weeding, pruning, and watering, as well as maintenance services including litter removal and preparation of refuse for sanitation pickup. Each Greenkeepers team is specially designed to match the needs of each project or contract. Customers of Greenkeepers obtain a well-seasoned team of workers with built-in supervision, skilled in the field of horticulture and maintenance. They also have the opportunity to become part of the solution for people trying to rebuild their lives through work. Greenkeepers is a recognized community partner in reclaiming New York City as a beautiful, green, and livable city. I think there's a photo somewhere.
Yep.
Of some happy folks.
Okay, we'll get another set of photos up here. Should I go down there so that I can, because there's
If
like
you want, yeah, if you
15.
want to, you're totally welcome
People
to
can
come up
hear
here
me.
and just advance it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have to,
Is this what Britt makes it for?
that should.
Hello. So I'm Pat Callahan. I'm the Director of Vocational Services at The Bridge, which is a mental health agency on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, with residences all around the city in every borough except Staten Island. I've been there for 25 years this year, and I inherited the urban farming program. Everybody kind of connected it with vocational. So I had actually put together a PowerPoint. We did a presentation at the ACL conference a couple of years back up at the Sagamore, and this is some of the photos from there.
I think middle button?
No? Do you know which one?
I don't know, but let's try. There, it's this side.
Of course, the one I didn't push. So, actually a photo of Debbie Kaplan when she came to visit one of our farms. So we thought I'd put that in there. So, just a little history of how it happened. Our Director of Development is Carol Gordon. She recognized that, well, let me start with, in 2004, we decided to put a roof deck on our corporate headquarters, basically to give our clients an aesthetically pleasing place to be and to not be hanging out on the street, getting all our neighbors aggravated. So we built this roof deck, and we partnered with the Horticulture Society of New York, who actually advised us and helped us to build all these spectacular planter boxes, and it was a really nice space. And from there, we decided that we were going to maintain that partnership and move into doing some work in our residential spaces. I'll say I'm probably the smallest program here, and what we're doing is really very much tied into our residents that live in our housing, and specifically clients who attend our PROS and OASIS programs. So in 2008, we applied for a United Way Seed grant, and we did get it. So we started a farm at one of our facilities in the Bronx that has a really big backyard. And they came to visit it, they loved it, and then in 2011, they gave us a second grant for a second urban farm. So we've really started doing this before it got to be all the rage. Although we've certainly not expanded anywhere near as much as some of my colleagues have. But we've incorporated into programming, and right here, this is an example of my whole program, horticulture program coordinator is Natalie Burkalik. She's one of my vocational staff, and when we started doing the urban farming, I asked her if she would like to move into doing this, and she was very happy to do it. So now we have some groups that are in our PROS program that are built around the theme of doing urban farming. She has a window garden group. Anybody who's on the urban farm horticulture team has to be in, they have to agree to be in some of these groups that we have. So this is just one example of, I don't know if you can see the beans growing, and that's like right in the middle of the program room. This is a photo from a workshop at one of the farms. We have volunteers who come and work with us each year. Volunteers are really important because we don't have the funding to have lots of staff involved with this. The way we set it up is we have 2 urban farms that are connected to programming, and Natalie spends one day at the farm in East Harlem with this team, and then Wednesdays she's at the other farm. So they're only at each farm once a week. And having a volunteer is really great. This was a woman who was going for her horticulture therapy certificate at the New York Botanical Garden, and this served as her internship. So usually they spend a couple of hours in the garden, and then there's a workshop. They use the fresh produce to make smoothies or pizza or something fun, and I'm usually not there. Another great benefit of having these urban farms is that it gives you these great spaces to host events. This was actually a Shinny workshop with Jolie. Anyway, so we hosted this workshop. The farm is kind of through the glass doors in the background. And as the first gentleman was saying, you don't really need a big space. This particular farm is not really that big. Our farm in the Bronx is a little bigger. We have a small greenhouse in the Bronx. But we started growing on a very small plot, and that's how we got the first seed grant. It wasn't very big at all. Another benefit that I always like to point out is that clients at all levels of function can participate in urban farming. There's so many different tasks that need to be done, and people at different ages and different physical capacities. These ladies, they don't really get out and dig in the dirt too much, but they love when produce comes in, washing the produce and showing it off. Everybody wants to get in the photos and show what they're doing. Another thing that we do frequently is to host corporate events. This is a picture of Goldman Sachs Community Teamwork Social Responsibility Program. They've come 5 or 6 years and done projects where they spend a day. There's usually a little stipend that we get to kind of set up a fun program that day. And we usually have a project that all these young able-bodied individuals can help us do that we wouldn't normally get a chance to get done. So I don't know what they were doing this year. One year they put in raised beds. Another year they kind of cleared all the brush that was on the exterior of the property. We don't go to farmers markets regularly, but this was a photo of one year that we did go. Obviously, having our folks get involved in community activities and community integration is really key. They don't always have opportunities to do that. And also the socialization component, when people are part of a team, this is something else. You know, they go to program, they go to groups, they don't necessarily do things together with a teamwork focus. So that's another great thing that happens just naturally. This is a photo of Natalie, who's the horticulture program coordinator and one of our previous residential area directors. This was just a typical harvest from one of the days. And the point here is just the bringing together the staff who work in program with the staff who work in the residential arena. And of course, having fresh produce available for people is just like the natural benefit. But it really does give you the opportunity for collaboration and integration so that like everybody's on the same page. Big focus is wellness, nutrition. The other groups we have in our program are healthy eating, healthy snacks, healthy cooking. These are like all the program activities that tie into what goes on with the team members. This is a picture of the team from 2014, I think. So these folks have actually all moved on. We have a whole new team. In the beginning, it was really difficult to engage people, believe it or not. You would think people want to go out and do this right in their backyard. No, not so much. It's catching on. This year we have 14 team members, which is astounding because we've had years where we only had 5. And there's some melons, and you could see sometimes things don't necessarily grow in really rich soil, and all kinds of produce. I think that is Swiss chard, not sure. And a little herb garden, composting. So we're teaching the clients. Another benefit is teaching the clients about the environment, being environmentally friendly, you know, using their scraps and, you know, how to preserve the environment. This is another example of a teamwork activity. This is in the very beginning of the season. Everybody sits down and does planning of the garden. We have some clients that have artistic ability and they like to do all of the drawings. But every year you have to rotate the crops. You never grow the same things in the same place. So everybody kind of sits down as a group and decides, makes decisions. And this is just a picture of the rainwater barrel, which is actually on the roof deck of our headquarters. And that's that.
All right, hello,
everyone. My name is Rica, and right here is Anna Moran. She's our community food coordinator and the urban ag guru, and she really has done all the work. So, and I'm just going to talk about it. No, but we're going to be here kind of together, and you know, there'll be time for questions and answers. Yeah, so to start out, this is our site in called Davidson in the Morris Heights neighborhood of the Bronx. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our different initiatives, and let's get started. So community access, we have 22 sites around the city, and this year we're growing at 11 of those 22 sites, so that's pretty good, 50%. Yeah, so in terms of urban ag, I'm just going to read this. Urban agriculture and community access aims to promote physical health and reduce isolation by creating opportunities for tenants to grow, harvest, and prepare nutrient-rich and culturally appropriate foods where they live. And our programming really centers the expertise and lived experience of the tenants, using skill sharing and knowledge transfer as ways to advance social justice. So I just want to highlight you know, building off people's existing expertise and lived experiences. We really find this as a way to create social connections through people's histories, and a lot of people living at our sites do have experience growing food or an agriculture background, and so really creating an environment where they can share that knowledge with each other. And I know that we as staff learn the most from our tenants. It's not just about, you know, teaching, it's about creating this opportunity to have this dialogue together and really talk about what folks want to create together. So a few photos here. This site, Anna, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong here. So is there might be like a laser.
There was a laser, yeah.
That's fun. Okay, I'm gonna keep you awake with a laser pointer here. This site is in Brooklyn. This is our DeKalb site, right? So this is one of the sites that kind of started to blossom right from the start. I know we have a staff member. Yeah, 2 staff members from DeKalb back there. Both of them are doing incredible work supporting the tenants to make this happen. So we have a number of raised planters here, and it's been kind of a fun experimental space. Up here is back at our Davidson site, and this tenant has been highly involved with carpentry and building the beds, taking a lot of pride in actually creating some of the raised beds. And I know Anna, you know, is all about using reclaimed wood and, you know, kind of recycling things. He's like, no, we need to make it, like, you know, perfect. And another resident from Warren Street.
That's from DeKalb.
Oh, DeKalb. This is 159th Street in Manhattan. And yeah, just some other photos of kind of getting ready. And I should mention that our sites really range in size. So we're growing at 11 sites, but that's everything from a couple of small containers, you know, container gardening, to many beds, and we keep growing. So we started with, this is our second full harvest season, so we're the newbies here. Second harvest season, we started at 5 sites, and like I mentioned, we're growing at 11 sites. Yeah, and just I want to say that in combination with creating an environment for skill sharing, we're really trying to create an opportunity for self-governance. So the more that we can kind of provide resources and opportunities for folks to kind of take initiative and leadership, and then we get to kind of step back a little bit and let folks self-govern their spaces and where they live. And then in combination with the growing, as you know, many of the other programs have, we're trying to complement the growing with a lot of other kind of health and wellness and nutrition programming. So we're doing farmers market walking tours. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Health Bucks. Oh, just a couple. Oh, great. Does one of you want to share what Health Bucks is?
Health Bucks is an initiative through New York City where when you go to a farmer's market, for every buck you spend, you get a health buck to spend with your money. So it helps you to spread your money out. So what happens at our building is that some of the tenants get together and they go and they buy at farmers markets together, and and then they use their health bucks together, so this way they can get more for their money. So like, say you spend $15, you get another, I think it's $3 health bucks. So that's another $3 that you can spend. So if they spend $30, that's another $6 of health bucks that they get to spend. So now they're spending like, what is that, $21? Whereas they didn't have $21 to start, but they probably had $7.50 now. Now they have $21 to actually work with, and they can have food for them.
Thanks, Diane. Awesome. Yeah, so they're $2 coupons redeemable at the farmers market, like Diane was saying. And just so you all know, community-based organizations can apply to the Department of Health for free health bucks. So there's an allotment through a USDA grant that all of us it's available for all of us. And those are redeemable at any farmer's market. You just have to use the coupons and combine them with programming. And it's a great way to drive some traffic to the farmer's market and to make it a little bit more accessible for people. So we're doing these farmer's market walking tours, cooking and nutrition workshops using the harvest yield from the gardens, and also some produce that we're purchasing from regional farmers. Making added value products. Anna is the queen of hot sauce. So if you have questions about hot sauce later, talk to Anna. Yeah, so added value products and entrepreneurship training, really, there's many people across our sites that are interested in starting food-related businesses. And so we're trying to figure out ways to support those endeavors. And so, it's integrated into our farms and the produce that we're growing, trying to build on that with added value products. And we're doing farm-to-table meals, and also this new project, food and digital art classes, so trying to give people some new computer-based skills, but marrying that with food, so creating recipes online, and then sharing those recipes with folks at their sites or staff members across the agency. Okay, and this is really exciting. So here is the Davidson building that I've already mentioned. So below, the building is up here, and they're growing on the terrace already. Below the terrace, we actually Community Access owns this space, which includes this large 120-foot, 5-foot wall, concrete wall here. And then this space, which is currently vacant and just, like lush weeds. So, right, like they're like 10 feet tall right now. So we are trying to work with New York Restoration Project, NYRP, to support us in activating this space into a community farm. And we just found out, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, that we got selected to partner with the New York City Department of Health on the Mural Arts Project. So thanks. So for the next year and change, we will be doing community art groups. There'll be this long process of deciding this mural with a professional artist. We'll kind of lead that process. And so we're going to activate this space with both a farm and a community mural. And then on the side of the building, which is not pictured, there's actually this very busy public corridor, these steps leading up from Jerome Avenue to Davidson Avenue. It's a really heavily trafficked area. For many people, it's been very unsafe for a long time, poor lighting. And so we're trying to activate that space by drawing the mural up through the more than 100-foot building. And so really figuring out a way to make this a community space, but also an opportunity for the tenants at that building to really take ownership of that space and be able to offer something to the community, build that bridge. And then lastly, we have broken ground on this site at 172nd Street, and as part of the plans for the building, there will be a working farm in the backyard with a greenhouse or hoop house here, and so we're in kind of the final stages of planning for that farm, but it's really exciting that we're going to do kind of higher yield production. So Mike, we have some things to learn from you. Okay, so I just put my contact information up there. As I mentioned, I'm the health and wellness coordinator, so I do things kind of across the agency. But Anna Moran is really the expert with all of our things urban ag, and she's our community food coordinator. So yeah, that's all I got.
I want to thank all the panelists. I'm not going to take it personally. They all left me alone on stage. I had the advantage I could watch it all on screen. But I think, it was great. There was really common themes that they all said, but really different approaches and everything from really small, the size of what we're sitting up here, to, much larger things. And so it just shows you can start small and just take it to the scale that's appropriate for your different agencies. Just to kick things off, I mean, we all have these incredible pressures in terms of mandates we've got from our funders, housing placements, making sure people are getting all the services they need. Funding, is incredibly tight. We all live in that. And so your advice to people who are thinking of doing this, how do you find the time and the money to do these programs? I think some people may say it sounds like a luxury. Clearly it's not, from all the things you said and the tremendous benefits. But I just think it's as I said in the beginning, our goal is that every agency here starts one of these or expands ones you have. And so tell people how to get over those hurdles.
Sure. So for SUS, it's quite varied. We're rather creative in the ways we kind of pull money from different locations to fund our programming. A large portion of it is actually from our facilities budget. So because we've taken over the landscaping for many of our sites, the contractor that had been providing that landscaping was a sizable budget line. So you're talking about, for a single site, $15,000 a year that's going to an external vendor. And by eliminating that, it's much more efficient to have an individual being paid $2,000 or $3,000 a year as a steward for that space, as a landscaper, having all of that extra funding for programming at the site. I think that it's definitely one way that we have gone about things. In addition to that, for any vocational supports, for individuals with developmental disabilities, some of our funding comes from the Supported Employment Program. So we do Medicaid billing for some of the services we provide. Corporate sponsorship is another wonderful source. I know some folks had mentioned having corporate volunteers come in, and where we do have those volunteer partnerships, we've been able to leverage that for donations to also provide funding for our programming. And then while it's not a large portion of our budget at the moment, it is something that's growing year after year in terms of providing services and product to the general public. So our farmers market sales, while it's still relatively small in terms of our overall budget, it is a growing opportunity to raise funding for the program, and looking at social entrepreneurship, mentioning things like landscaping for external clients, I think is any real social enterprise, I think, is kind of a really wonderful way to generate revenue in the same motion that you're engaging residents and offering some really excellent programming.
Greenkeepers started well before I got there, actually, but I think one of the things that assisted the growth of Greenkeepers was a small grant from the Green Acre Foundation. And it was unlike other grants. So what we did was we could bill them for paying the trainees to work at the various different sites in Riverside Park. So that became sort of the base of our Riverside Park team, which then eventually became Greenkeepers. And we used that when we first brought members in. And we still get a grant from the Green Acre Foundation, thankfully, even though I know a lot of foundations have been struggling. So that was really the base for being able to pay the trainees when they first came in and give them some experience. We have some other private funding as well, but as you can imagine, Goddard is a multi-service agency in mental health, and our program is not the only type of program that we have. So unless I kind of go out and do a little research or steal ideas from other folks who are doing the same kind of work, we find some foundations who could help us. But mostly it's now through the revenues that we have. We also started out working with other nonprofits as our customers, like the Business Improvement Districts or the Broadway Mall Association or local block associations. So it was kind of like we were all trying to help each other out. So we started out not really charging marketable rates, and now we've gotten to the point where we can charge much better rates to cover. I mean, the difficulty now is that the minimum wage, as you all know, is going up each year. Right now it's 11, it's going to be 13 in January, and then 15. So for small businesses like us, it's, and of course we want to pay a living wage to our folks, and we demand a living wage for them, but at the same time, from the business perspective, it's very, very hard to continue to try to train and employ more new people when our customers also have to watch the budget. But I think we had the support of Goddard, so I think initially we were not self-sustaining. And my dream, and the business manager's dream, is to become our own 501c3 at some point, under the umbrella of Goddard, so that we can aim to be self-sustaining and cover all of our costs and things like that. But right now, we're sort of up in the range of the revenue, not what we're actually earning, but somewhere around $235,000, which is so different from when I first came to the program in 2006, where it was more in the $50,000, $60,000 range. So it's really grown a lot, and there is a movement, as we all know, to do all things green. And we're so pleased that we were able to be there at the beginning. And it really, I think the camaraderie of working in the crew. So many of our folks are so isolated, don't have family. Some need to get out of the residences sometimes even, because that's where they get their main support, but they want to have some place to go and they want to feel like they're productive and doing something. And here they're interacting with the public all the time, and I can't tell you, even when I go out with the teams, people are coming up to me all the time and thanking us for either keeping the streets clean or gardening or making things look beautiful, and they can see the fruits of their labor and they feel so good about it. So, but you can start very small.
Literally see the fruits of your labor. We'll take a few more comments and then I want to open it. I promise that we'd have about at least a half hour for questions from the audience. So.
Okay, yeah, I'll be quick. So I just wanted to say that I think it's important that your executive leadership be invested in what you're doing. Tying it into your mission is really important, and whoever does your fundraising, that's probably the most important person. It's a very attractive fundraising activity, actually. People love it. I mentioned that we started with the United Way seed grants. People can apply for those. I believe they still exist. And once you have that first seed grant, it's usually about $30,000. The years following, you don't need near as much money to keep it going and to sustain. Burpee Foundation is a big funder for us, as well as Wells Fargo has helped a bit through the years.
I'll just add quickly, building partnerships with, just building relationships and partnerships with other organizations that do similar work and can offer pro bono expertise. So for example, NYRP, they are such champions of helping us support this new farm. They aren't able to offer any direct funds, but they are offering pro bono expertise. So running our plans through their capital team, things that would take us a lot of time and having to put out other resources, we're able to get support for kind of, pro bono. So I'll just add to that as, building relationships with other organizations.
And I'll just add, if you need help convincing your executive directors, they can call me. And I know my counterparts in all of these great agencies sitting with me, and without having consulted with them, I will offer them too. And I'll let them know that. But I truly mean that. Questions from people in attendance?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm curious as to how you identify your sites. Do you have partnerships with developers or management companies? How do you figure out where you start your lovely gardens and farms?
For us, it's actually tenant identified. So regardless of what space might be available, If we have someone that's coming to either their program director or is calling our main office and saying, hey, we want to get involved with gardening, we want to do gardening in the back, or we've heard this other site of yours has this great initiative, we want to get involved with that, we'll go out, we'll do, myself or one of my supervisory team members will do a kind of consultation and then engage the residents kind of from day one. For our new constructions, we generally try to integrate the concept of urban farms within the landscaping design without actually implementing it. So we often start post-construction with a blank slate, and that is to provide the opportunity for tenants, again, to be involved from day one. Because something that we've found in the past and kind of learned from was if you don't have that engagement of both the staff and the residents at the site, it's going to be a time suck for your supervisory staff that might be working specifically with the initiative, and it's really not going to succeed over time. Yeah, if we have a site that's just kind of a blank slate that we could go in and do basic landscaping with, that's great. And then if we have program staff and residents that are really gung-ho and really want to get a green initiative going with urban farms, we'll go in and provide support for that. Or if we don't identify anyone right away, we don't have that infrastructure in place that needs maintenance from day one. We're able to just kind of maintain it until we're able to identify residents or they self-identify. So yeah, that's kind of the approach from SUS. It's really a resident-directed approach.
Anna, do you want to add anything to how we select sites, or?
I guess it was kind of similar to see who's, like, for example, at the Cal, Diane, there was the first site that we started like a year ago, and Diane is already someone who's been doing food justice kind of on her own, but then when we started to see like what site would be the best to engage tenants, because tenants were like growing stuff like, let's say, in little corners here and there. So that was like a potential for a site to, as a pilot. And from that, from one bed, there was 2 and 3 and 4, and and now people are more taking videos of each other. And now the newer staff, it's actually a farmer lover from Kentucky, right? So then you have like a perfect combination of a program director who supports it. You have staff who's willing, with all the work that you already have, to also connect and do things together. And then more tenants are coming up, and then you just build from there. At the beginning, it wasn't as easy because you're right. Like people don't just be like, yeah, it takes a while to build up. But like I think like this year, you can see everything just came into place. So, yeah.
The bridge, we have used our residential facilities, basically our backyards. I would just say from a very simple standpoint, you need to make sure what your lighting is. Even on our roof deck, we've got hours of the day where there's no sun. So depending on what you want to grow, it can be in an urban environment, that can be an issue. Shadows.
I would just say, as agencies, are contemplating new sites, that you think of it, from the beginning, because you deal with issues like light and all that. So many of us, sort of repurpose existing facilities, but again, put that seed, so to speak, in people's minds that as they're developing new sites or renovating them, that this should be, equal to other aspects of construction.
Hi. I have 2 questions for you. One is that the city runs a grant program, a green infrastructure grant program run by DEP that will fund most, if not all, of the capital costs of green infrastructure. And I'm wondering if any of you have taken advantage of that program. The second question, very different one, but there is something you all spoke about was scale. And what are the greatest barriers to you scaling your programs, and what might be helpful in overcoming those?
To the first point, I think you may be talking about the stormwater retention grants. is a funding avenue we've looked into but haven't implemented yet. It is certainly a really lovely opportunity, I think, for anyone that's doing new construction or who has plans on renovating a roof. And just can give you a quick background. DEP, so the Department of Environmental Protection, will provide funding if you're able to retain certain amounts of stormwater to prevent it from going into the stormwater system. So if you're familiar, for instance, with Brooklyn Grange, which is one of the larger urban farms in New York City, that's where they got most of their initial funding to launch their projects.
Has anybody else used? No. No. Okay. Hopefully, maybe somebody here will be the first.
So yeah, SUS just hasn't found the right fit quite yet, but I absolutely think that's a great opportunity for folks to look into, especially if they're moving in that direction for a project anyways, or there's a new construction where they're looking to do something innovative with the rooftop. To the second point, I think it actually goes back to engagement, where for some of our sites, we may have folks that are really interested at first, but either their staff turnover or residents leave after a year or two or transition to another program, and we lose that momentum for that particular site. And it's not necessarily starting from square one, but they may need additional support, which takes away from expanding out to additional sites, which takes away from programming we're able to offer to additional sites. So I think the way we've tried to tackle that is just trying to maintain engagement and create a lot of peer mentorship opportunities. So rather than having one person that's a green thumb at a site that really wants to tackle the garden and have them be the individual in charge, we make sure that every site has at least a few individuals that are involved. And even if there's one person that really has that background in horticulture or that particular interest and drive to be involved, that person is still providing a lot of mentorship to peers to make sure that if that individual ever transitioned out or decided they no longer wanted to be a part of the program, we wouldn't necessarily lose that expertise and momentum.
I'll just add, for us, I think the first season there was like a lot, piloting at a couple different sites and building buy-in, and then all of a sudden all of our sites wanted, growing. And our team is mighty, but it's the two of us. And there's a lot of staff who are heavily invested and heavily involved. So I think the challenge for us in terms of kind of expansion is to not go too quickly and keep it quality and keep it meaningful and make sure that we're spending time, like Mike said, building that engagement. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is there's such a high demand, and it's a challenge to meet that demand with limited staff capacity. So building kind of a network of other people who may want to volunteer or getting people with peer expertise as interns. We have a lot of, as part of the community access, we have a lot of peer training programs. And so bringing them in, folding those folks in to support our efforts and to kind of grow the capacity of our team. But I think it's human power is a big barrier to expanding.
Pat, I think you mentioned you went from 5 to 15 people involved.
Well, those are the actual clients on the team.
So anything that you think led to that? Was it just natural, or again some trips with those in the town?
I'm not really sure what all of a sudden people have. I think that as years have gone by, there's just more and more emphasis in society that we are in for people to be involved with green activities. I would say for my agency, if we could get more of, and I don't think there's anyone in the room from my agency, but if we could get more of our residential staff involved in this mission of having our any spaces, because as I've said several times, you don't need a big space to do this. Because engaging the residents in the buildings, because our population is seriously mentally ill, we're starting to have mixed use populations, but where our farms are now, it's, we have like 20 residents in there, and to try and get people to buy into it has really been difficult. So in terms of scale, we've kind of done it where we can do it, and then we do kickoffs, and we just go in there and try and get everybody excited, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Aside from the obvious benefits, like actual produce being provided, what kinds of things have you seen from clients? Like, what are they getting out of it that you feel is beneficial?
For us, it's like the idea that people often are isolated, and you start to build community that is happening organically with people. It's not you saying do these, but it's you providing something like space where people can grow food, but also start making like they have social soups, for example. Sometimes at a site that we went to the farmer's market and people went and harvest herbs from the garden, and then we came together and we made a meal, brought people together that never would have participated because it was a soup. And it was one of those things that it was like a cross-cultural, I think. Like everybody's like, oh, that's what the doctor told me, to have soups.
Yeah.
So it was something that wasn't intentional, but because people wanted to cook together. Another thing, for example, we have sites in Brooklyn, and we do like a farm to table. And one of the sites, because of the sun, there's no sun, doesn't grow as much as the other site. So what we are trying to do is to, for example, Tang will travel to Warren Street, and which is where the other side is, and like other tenants are doing presentations together. So everybody's presenting on let's say cilantro, what can you do with that? And then there's a whole meal that happens, and or just happens that people want to volunteer because maybe Tang is leading a big meal, but it's like two sides. So now you have all these people at a community room really participating, right? So there's no script, everybody's just coming together. So I think those are some of the benefits that you didn't plan, it just happens.
Yeah, and then there's also the productivity aspect. This brings a whole different dimension to people's lives when they get involved with this. They love being part of a team. They love that they're actually being productive, and they're very proud of it. So there's so many different benefits that come out of it, really.
Deborah, this is sort of your field.
I just wanted to say that I think the camaraderie that develops among the folks who are working, and for us it's they're training and they're working together, but it's such a variety of different kinds of people, men, women, different ages, different backgrounds. It's kind of fun if you're riding in the van and you hear all of their talk together, and they get to know each other in a way. They're kind of close in a way, and yet it's not like a forced friendship or anything like that. It's a work relationship. And now we have new office space where our program is, but the front is where they all gather in the morning, and they're all sitting, and we can hear everything they're saying, and it's kind of fun, It's just like everybody else, They have their relationships, and they're very tolerant with each other, and they care for each other, they watch out for each other in a way that you couldn't, you only hope for that, and this helps it to happen. Whether it's because they're gardening together or because they're working together, it's just a much more natural way to meet people and be around people. And it builds such a sense of community. We have wonderful barbecue and holiday parties that everybody wants to be a part of. And I think that speaks to the strength of the relationships that they're developing and the confidence that they're building and being around other people.
Absolutely would concur with all of that, and would even go further to say that there are certainly specific wellness benefits we're seeing at SUS with individuals with mental illness. So we've seen reduction in incidents, for instance, at one of our veterans facilities where there was strong substance abuse, lots of incidents that were being recorded. Urban Farms comes in. While we don't have an exact study of it, we're seeing that kind of correlation between when Urban Farms is introduced and folks are involved in these horticulture programming, reduction in incidents. We're seeing reduced social anxiety, so individuals that would not get on the train before being involved with urban farms. Just being in that group setting, interacting with folks in a really non-confrontational environment. There is a specific individual I'm thinking of that after 4 months was comfortable enough to actually go with a peer that he was working with within urban farms and start riding the train. Individual with schizophrenia who actually uses weeding as a focusing technique when he's experiencing really strong hallucinations. So there are a lot of really interesting benefits, I think, both from just kind of the social standpoint, from a vocational standpoint, but also very much so from an actual therapeutic standpoint.
I think there's one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually more about the agriculture. But do any of you guys have tried permaculture techniques or like the forest farm idea?
The short answer is yes. The space that we have, so permaculture, just for folks to understand in general, is kind of an approach to agriculture that treats it as a very holistic process that tries to work with the design to maximize the production while minimizing the inputs, but also kind of takes a look at how the design would impact social spheres and how it would impact the overall community, how it would have a regional impact, an environmental impact. We have done 2 things with permaculture within SUS. One is that during the winter, particularly during kind of December and early January, when we're really not doing too much, even in the greenhouses, we do training and workshops indoors. And one of those every year is around permaculture principles and general design techniques that folks can try to implement when they do the designs for their sites in mid-January. The second thing is that we definitely try to pick from permaculture principles and introduce those at our sites whenever we can. So kind of basic good agriculture like companion planting, definitely something we do. We do have some spaces that have been big enough to do fruit trees. And for there, we have tried to do some companion planting around that, but there's not been any space large enough to do something like an urban food forest, which I think you may have been alluding to, which I think would be a wonderful thing for anyone that has a larger space and has tenants that would be interested in something like a food forest. There's actually some really nice examples now, particularly one in Seattle called Beacon Food Forest, where communities are getting together and creating these really high, dense plantings within urban environments that have kind of canopies of fruit-producing trees, but then understories of herbs and vegetables. So again, we look to our tenants to kind of direct our design process. So while I am definitely a permaculture advocate overall, I wouldn't do anything beyond just kind of showing them the principles, and then it's really up to them to commit to the overall design, which I think is the better approach in the way to really get that engagement. But yeah, I think in terms of education and just introducing those principles and trying to implement them here and there where you can, yeah, that's a great thing.
Is anybody else?
No.
You had a question?
Similar companion
Oh,
planting.
yeah.
And there is a couple of sites of a permaculture teacher that farm school had that she will give us some. There is a farm like Stone Park in Brooklyn has a very permaculture approach, which is very close to one of our sites, which is a site that has a lot of shade. So we have gone there to see that beautiful space, and like she's kind of sort of collaborating with us.
Claudia Joseph?
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's a beautiful thing, but we don't have the space, so it's good to have it like a walking distance to figure it out. Maybe we can do something with that.
I was just curious, talking about benefits, for the spaces that are repurposed, so not on rooftops, have you guys seen any increase in value to the property now that it's being greened or turned into more of a park space? Or
Well, I mean, for the bridge, it's basically our backyard, so I'll tell you that aesthetically, it's awesome. I mean, the clients who live in the buildings, they may not engage in the activities of urban farming, but they're out there smoking a lot. But, I would say that it's definitely increased the value of, just looking at it. It's beautiful. Yeah, and the soil is much better because every year, we remediate the soil and bring in new soil.
I know we work with the Broadway Mall Association, and they, the strip that goes through the boulevard all the way from 70th to 168th Street. So I've seen pictures recently at their gala of what that space used to look like before. I've been in that area for 40 years, but it was pretty desolate and it was pretty awful, and also drug infested, and the soil is like sand, and it's just incredible how lush and beautiful that whole strip is, even going all the way uptown, and how many people utilize it and sit on those benches and eat there, and some people even plant things there. We don't even know what they are half the time, but I mean, it's really incredible use of public space, and how they're pretty small. They're not even a full bid, but they're pretty small grassroots kind of organization, and I think they get each neighborhood, in every few blocks involved in that, and it's really made such a huge difference to how we look at Broadway and the kinds of activities that are going on and all the festivals and things like that. It's pretty amazing. So I think it's really visible. And now they have a whole public art campaign out there, so people are coming out to see that. And I mean, that's for the community and folks who actually are doing the work. So I think that's added to the value of our neighborhoods, tremendously.
And in addition to adding the value, to some degree, it can decrease the costs. I mean, there's the maintenance costs, but you have trees, they put shade on the building, you reduce, energy costs, and, ultimately we do enough of these projects throughout the city, can begin to sort of change the quality of the air. But, there's real data on the amount of energy reduction when you've got, trees or even vines growing on the sides of buildings. And then the whole biophilia sort of benefit to those problems. Even if people aren't engaged in it, just walking into an entryway where there's a green wall just kind of relaxes people. You have a question?
I have a very specific question just to my own personal business. I'm with the managing director of the MRT Supportive Housing Initiative. What we do is we like to invest in social determinants of health. And so is there a way to take this model, this urban farm model, and say, okay, well, not only are we going to teach you how to grow this stuff, but we're going to also teach you how to eat this, and that you can have this health benefits. So is there like a nutritional food preparation component to your program, or is it just really the social component of having the work?
Interesting that you asked that question, because I was at a conference 2 weeks back at the American Health Association on Fifth Avenue, and I was actually invited there by one of our DISRIP partners, who, the reason I was there was because we need to find a way to show how this type of programming is beneficial, and to find the money in all of these places where the money now is to flow into these programs. So there's definitely a way. We're going to have a follow-up brainstorming session, and I think it'll happen, but it doesn't seem like it's naturally been set up to happen.
Okay, but it's possible.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely possible, what you said.
I would say, especially with our partners at Shinning, sort of collectively, because there is the data for it. I think it's critically important.
We'll mention, while at very early stages, we, SUS just started a 2-year process with Enterprise for what's called a health outcomes demonstration project. They have kind of set of tools, mostly survey tools, but also tools for doing things like focus groups and things like that, specifically to measure health outcomes, so measuring things like food security, measuring certainly like the social outcomes, but also measuring kind of the more practical outcomes like nutrition and things like that. We're just kind of putting those together now, and we're going to do a kind of a pilot over the course of this summer to run that through a few of our programs that have our larger urban farm sites. So I think the tools are out there to measure it, but I would agree where, yeah, I think the opportunity to get kind of that hard data is still there for programs.
I think in the back, there's a...
I know the initiative started a little bit before Anna came, because we find that the tenants would go to food pantries and often didn't know how to utilize some of the food that they use from food pantries. So we would find that it would be great. Usually not the weekly when there's something that you don't want to use, you want to donate. There's usually a creek where you can put stuff. So what happened was I happened to notice that there was a particular amount of a certain product. So I found ways of either using nutritional hour where we fix breakfast, either hot or continental breakfast, or when we have one of our groups where we usually fix professors after it, to utilize those products to fix for the tenants. From that, it became a conversation about health. And they started talking about diabetes and high blood pressure and vertigo and all the various things. Me being a person of food justice, I started looking up for certain types of foods. So when we got the initiative with, and Anna started coming to do our on-site garden, I sat with her and we discussed the types of herbs that we wanted to get so that they could be beneficial for health. From that initiative, I've seen a reduction in the medications that many of our tenants take for diabetes, where I have food tenants that were insulin dependent and now are pill form dependent, or people who were taking blood pressure pills where they're taking 3, 4, maybe 5 types of blood pressure pills and another pill for the stomach for the pill. But once we started utilizing it and then seeing how we use the herbs and we use vegetables and changing how they view food, especially from a meat-based diet to a more plant-based diet to even a raw diet, we started to see how their health have changed, how they have lost weight, and things like that. So building the gardens is one part of the initiative, but our initiative from the very beginning, I know at DeKalb, is how is this going to be able to be beneficial to the health and wellness of our tenants. Because we're also now seeing the reduction in some of the mental health medications, because they're now engaged in finding out about herbs and Googling herbs and things like that, and they're going to Anna now saying, oh, I would like to see this herb, or I would like to see this plant or this vegetable, because I found out this could help with what I have. So when they started to partner with us in that conversation, they became stewards for their own health through the community gardens. And I think that that's important to be able to do, not just to grow something that looks pretty, but something that's sustainable, and they can see not just the fruits of their labor, but the health of their labor.
There's a question, I think.
I'm sorry. I think there's an amazing point that it provides for an opportunity. You guys are talking about possible funding. I mean, if you can partner with PPS and demonstrate that what you're doing will help them achieve like this social determinant goal that they need by having positive public impacts. That's an amazing way to get to it.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. Well, for yours, I think you had a question?
Yeah, so other than Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, I believe that city agency was mentioned, do you guys work or partner with any other city agency? And if not, do you see opportunities for a partnership or collaboration?
For SUS, Department of Homeless Services, that's a big one. And I would say even everything from our local community board to pretty much across the board, I would say. The full range of city agencies, from pretty much everything involved with building and housing to everything involved with zoning to things like homeless services and health and mental hygiene. So yes is the short answer. I think for us, it's sometimes more efficient to look at other partners first, unfortunately. I think that navigating some of the requirements to access resources within the city agencies is sometimes more difficult, at least in our experience, than, for instance, reaching out to a corporate partner or trying to identify a private nonprofit that we could partner with for different services. But I do think it is a resource for folks that are looking to connect with those agencies.
We work a lot with the state, Office of Mental Health, Department of Education.
We've also had a fair amount of success with our, city council members.
Yes.
So, for example, I mentioned, a shelter. There was a yard next to it, and frankly, was not very aesthetically appealing. But again, in sort of tight budget times, it's hard to get capital dollars from some of the city agencies. But it also, not only is it great benefit for the residents of that shelter, but it keeps them more off the street. And so there was sort of a lot of community support, and it was an unusual situation where we had the city agency, not-for-profit, myself, and the community board all going to both the borough president and the city council. And it's not, usually you have those three people together. Well, that's a pretty winning combination. It's not a tremendous cost, but we were able to get those funds between the borough president and the city council member. And because it's, sort of seniors really improving, the local neighborhood. So that's another resource that we have found helpful.
Hey, I'm from Housing Preservation and Development. I'm very interested in this, and I'd say, in terms of partnership, I'm not sure of existing programs, but in terms of new construction and preservation, I think it'd be very interesting seeing how you actually project the financing on these types of operations, and up front, if this can be drawn into the budget, it's all the better, right?
I hope we brought lots of cars with you. I think a lot of people are going to come see you after. We have probably time for maybe one or two more questions. I think in the very back.
Going back to what you were saying, I'm a representative from district, the Presbyterian CPS. I'm wondering if you're tracking your health outcomes, because that's really important in terms of district. We're looking for creative, innovative ways to really affect patient care. And my PPS, and especially my colleague and I, are really interested in urban farming and this type of work. So I'm wondering, have you set up metrics that you're tracking to show positive health outcomes, and is just as a way to kind of help us understand how we could better fund your projects?
Well, for us, we utilize our service plans. And when
Service plans.
Especially when a lot of times it's about homes. And connected to a diabetic doctor. Now it's not so much connected to the diabetic doctor. We've moved on from connecting to that to I'm going to make more healthy food choices for myself. So I'm going to prepare more meals for myself. So I'm going to come when we have our harvesting to get herbs and things like that. I'm going to have conversations with my doctor with regards to how I can use holistic things along with medications and how we can reduce my medications. Where do you see me in 6 months, a year? So they're having different conversations with the doctors with regards to medication and outcomes of medication versus health. So we've been utilizing our service plans as well as our annual health plans to be able to collect their data.
And can I just add to that? So we've been talking about evaluation because it's not something that's happened on a big scale or kind of really, we haven't necessarily planned for it in a big way. But in thinking through, I come from a public health background in the Department of Health, so I'm used to kind of rigorous evaluation. But it sometimes it's not the best fit for a program or for our tenants who are used to signing their name, filling out paperwork, and used to that kind of very kind of that type of dynamic. So we've been talking about potentially some really powerful and meaningful qualitative evaluation methods, like using something like photo voice, where I don't know if people are familiar with photo voice, but it's basically the concept of using photography to capture a person's response to a prompt. So if we're going to talk about the impact of urban agriculture, you would say something like, how has being involved in the garden impacted your health? And people would take photos in response to that prompt, and then describe why they took that photo. So while it's not capturing quantitative data, which we know is important and meaningful and is required for funding, to think through some other alternatives to that that involve storytelling, that are a little bit easier entry, that might involve community building as part of the process. So we're definitely there, and seeing as we're still new, there's this opportunity to kind of get it now and be able to have some more information along the lines of the true impact, the measured impact. So yeah, thanks for that question. It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried that at this late hour, that my dad and Darrell wouldn't have a lot of questions, but you've been absolutely a fantastic audience. These are really great questions, really bright. I want to thank each and one of our panelists. They've done a great job. We are ending on the dot. Please, come up. There's obviously a few more questions out there. The panelists will be here, as well as their colleagues, to answer any other questions you might have. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.